Okay, let's go ahead and go over chapter 10, and this is on graphics. So I'm going to go ahead and get to that chapter. So chapter 10, it's about graphics. Actually, it's about GUI and graphics, almost in a sense, two different topics. I usually consider GUI things like drawing lines and things like that, and graphics being windows and labels and buttons that you put on a window. So this time around, I'm going to cover some material and I'm going to go ahead and run some code, do it back and forth. So we first start off talking about GUI. The GUI packages that we'll be importing are the AWT and the swing package. Now the AWT is the older one and the swing package is the newer one. The thing to remember here is the swing package provides us with the capability of getting GUI on screen. Now we can go ahead and make very specific import statements, or we can just go ahead and use the wildcard, which is a little asterisk. So the best way to experience this is just type in the code from the very beginning. But usually we'll be using not only the AWT as well as the swing package for this particular chapter. Remember, the AWT stands for the Abstract Windowing Toolkit. It's the older GUIs, and it's pretty much caters to the Windows style of windowing. The newer GUIs begin with the capital letter J, and they're in the swing set. All right. So how do you create a window? Well, first of all, you're going to have the proper import statements. But we start off by creating an object, and this can be done in different ways. In this particular example, we're passing a string literal, and that's what's going to show up in the title bar of the window. We'll also have to specify the size, the location, the default close operation, and the set visibility. Now, here's what it looks like. Yeah, all that code just to get this, and I'm not even showing you the import statement and all that kind of stuff. That's why I think the best thing to do, instead of just reading along here, I probably need to show you some code as soon as possible. Now, she talks about placing components in the window, but she's not really doing anything other than just showing you how to get the content pane and set it to yellow. In the previous editions, she added, at this point in time, then text boxes and labels were added. Okay, but we go directly into drawing things. Okay, so before we go any further, let me just go ahead and look at the first little demo on here. And the first, that's what she had there on the screen. I went ahead and just did my rendition of it. So this is my rendition of it. The first thing you got to do is we're going to have to go ahead and have an import statement. We're going to bring in specifically the JFrame package. So this is in the swing package. We're going to bring in the JFrame class and in the swing package. Then inside of main, the first thing we do is we create a JFrame object. And this JFrame object, in this particular case, we're passing it a string literal. That's whatever you put in here is going to show up in the title bar of the window. We're going to set the size. Now I embellished this a little bit. I think hers was a width of 200 by 100. I'm just making it a little bit bigger here because my title didn't show up. Maybe my fonts are different or whatever. So I had to make it a little bit bigger. The other thing we're doing here is we're setting the relative location. So basically the default location is the upper left-hand side. If you want it to show up in the middle, you're going to say frame.setLocation relative to null. That'll put it right in the middle. And then you got to set the default close. If you don't put this, when you close your program, you're going to have difficulty closing it. And you also have to set visibility, the property for your frame. Now, you're wondering, why do I have to do all this? But it kind of makes sense. Like you're thinking of yourself as a computer, that you want to know what you want to put in the title bar, how big the window is going to be, where do you want it to be, what's going to happen when it closes, and do you want it visible? Why? Because if you have a multi-form application, you could be loading a lot of forms, you could set the visibility to false and then load them only when needed. So there's a lot of things that you've got to go ahead and just trust for now and do. So let me just go ahead and run this. And there it is. See how it says title of window here? Yeah, all that code just for this silly little thing, okay? But you're saying, well, you know, look at what I got. I mean, somebody had to write the code for the minimize and maximize and the close button and, you know, the gray on here, and you know, so we're getting more than what we think we're getting on here. Okay, so that was pretty much the first section, you know, on here. Going back to the book now, we'll talk about drawing. In this particular case, it's really called, we're going to put things in a paint method. In this particular case, a paint component method, you know, which is, you know, a method that really, believe it or not, gets called automatically when you have, when you create the object. So the layout here, the thing to remember here is that we're using a coordinate system. The origin is 0, 0, which is in the upper leftmost corner. So we're going to have an x-axis and a y-axis. And we're going to draw some strings. Yeah, believe it or not, it's a string. It's actually graphic. So before we draw it, we're going to set the font. We're going to set the size of the font. Like say, for example, here, I can do this two different ways. I can go and do it all on one line, or I can do it on two lines. In other words, I can create my font object, and then I can pass that font object to the set font method. Then when I use the drawstring method and I have some text drawn on the window, I can specify at what X and Y coordinates this will be at. Okay, so these coordinates here are in pixels, to whereas the font is in points, and those are two different things. Okay, so we can also change the color, and when we're changing the color, this would be color constants. We can either have a color constant or a color object on here. So an example of a color constant would be passing color.green to set color method of the graphics object, right? Or we could go ahead and create a color object by using the new keyword and passing 0, 128, 128 and calling your object my teal. And then of course you would pass my teal to the set color method of the graphics object. So printing the screens is done by means of the draw string method, and you specify the X and Y coordinates that this will appear on. So before we go ahead and talk about drawing lines, let's go ahead and look at some more code. Okay. So I'm going to go over here to my next demo, and let me just walk you through some of the code here. Well, this next demo, let me see now. It's a little bit of a review still before I get into I really wanted to talk about the third one, but let's go over this one here. This one here is pretty much the same as the other one, but it brings in, or the first one, it brings in a little bit more import statements, and let's see why. I create my object. I go ahead and set the size, the location. Oh, here's the new stuff. This is the container. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create the container pane, and then we've got to add the container. So all we're really doing here is setting the background color. You know, on here we're setting the background color to yellow in this particular case. So in order to do all that, I have to have an import statement. We already brought in, or did we? Let's see. In the first one I brought in the JFrame. Okay. So the new one here would be the container and the color. Okay, and these are members of the AWT, Abstract Windowing Toolkit. So these are the two new import statements, and they're related to these last two lines here. So what we're doing here is the last line on there, color.yellow. We're using a color constant here, and we're passing that to the set background method, and that is how we're going to get yellow. So we're only adding two lines here. We're creating the content pane, and then we're setting the color. Typically, what would be done after this is that we would go ahead and create labels and buttons and text boxes and create a business-like application. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to go and draw lines and circles and draw strings and stuff like that on the form. Okay. Let me go ahead and run this. The way I'm going to be running this, and I'll give you this code later on, is I'm going to right mouse click on this code window, and I'm going to click on Run File. So the only thing different from last time to this time is that now we've got yellow. Those are those two extra lines of code. Okay, let me go ahead. In order to get that yellow on there, of course I could have just said import java.awt.asterisk. But I was more specific here is because I want you all to know that I'm having to import the container class and the color class so that I can go ahead and create a container that I'm going to end up putting in the frame of the window, and then I'm going to set the color of that, container to yellow, right? All right, so that's a stepping stone to the next one here. The next one, a little bit more imports, but really we could condense all of these imports into just two. Import javax.swing.asterisk and import java.awt.asterisk. But I'm being more specific here because we really need to know the class names. We're going to import the JFrame class, the JComponent class, the container class, the color class, the font class, and the graphics class. So let's go ahead and take a quick look on here. The biggest thing that we see here is that we're on line 25 here, we're extending JComponent. That's a little bit of inheritance going on here. So whenever I create an object, it's going to be inheriting from JComponent. So it's going to be a child, so this, and inherit all the capabilities of JComponent. All right, so first thing I do here is I go ahead and create a JFrame object. And then I'm going to go ahead and notice the location of this. This is class level. This is not in main. These two lines of code are class level. All right, so I'm creating a frame. And then I'm going to go ahead and get the container for the frame and name it content. All right, that's being done with the get content pane method of the frame object. All right, so then inside of main, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an object from this class, the class graphics demo 3. So I say graphics demo 3 space draw text, that's going to be the name of my object, gets new graphics demo 3. That is how you create an object. And this object is going to extend from JComponent and give us all those capabilities. Then what I'm going to do is instead of typing in code inside of main, I'm going to call a method called setup. And in setup, this is where I'm going to go ahead and set the background color and then add that background color to the pane. And then I'm going to go ahead and continue with setting the size of the window, setting the location, the default close operation, as well as its visibility. The next neat thing we have here is the pane component method. Now the pane component method receives a graphics object. Notice here how we've got the word graphics, and it's a capital G. We've got a little letter G. Now we can call this X if we wanted to, instead of little letter G, but by convention we call it G. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to draw some strings, but before I draw my string, I'm going to go ahead and create a font and then set the font. And then I'm going to draw the text on the screen. Now notice what I'm doing here. I'm setting it at X and Y coordinates. The first one here is going to be at X of 0 and Y of 30. Then I'm going to go ahead and change the default color to green. Then I'm going to go ahead and say the same thing again, and I'm going to change the X and Y. I'm going to change the color again, and I'm going to change the X and Y again. Now notice, like the first time, we're just using the default color. The second time I'm using a color constant, and the next time I'm using a color object. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like when I run it. That's the entire, oh, and but you notice here, this again, this paint component method is going to get called when I instantiate or create the draw text object, which is instantiated off of the graphics demo 3 class, which inherits from J component. Okay, so the J component has a paint component method associated with it. So notice I'm not going to go ahead and call it, that it's going to go ahead and get called automatically. So the paint component method gets called automatically when the J component object is created. Right mouse clicking on here and then clicking on run file. So it says hello Java GUI, hello Java GUI. It's the same thing over and over. All I'm doing is I'm changing the X and Y coordinates, and I'm changing the color of the text. Right, so that's my third example on here. Let's go ahead and go back to the book. So now we're going to talk about drawing lines, and that's going to be done with the draw line method. So the first two integers represent the X and Y pixels where the line should begin, and then the last two integers represent the X and Y pixels of where the line should end. So we're going to use a method called the drawLine method, and we're going to go ahead and use a graphics object. So it's g.drawLine, and we're going to specify the beginning point, which is X and Y, and the ending point. And I'm going to just copy this code in here, right? The syntax is shown right up here, and I'm going to just draw two lines, and I'm going to compare. I'm going to go ahead and show you that on the screen. Okay, let's go and look at the code. And we just did 3, and we're going to go to the next demo one here. So I have the same import statements. And the big difference on here is with the paint component method. I said I was just going to copy in those two lines, and I did. Okay, so let's go ahead and imagine 0, 0 is upper left, right? So it's going to go to 50, 50. So X is 50. So I go to the right 50, and then down on the Y-axis 50. So you can imagine how that line is going to be going. Then the next line here is going to go from 50 on the X-axis, and then it's not going to go down the Y-axis at all. Then the ending point is going to go X50 and then Y75. Let me go ahead and run this so that you can go ahead and take a look at this. There it is. Let me put this on the side so you can go ahead and see it. 0, 0 is right up here on the upper left, 50 and 50. So that line starts here and ends here. The next line starts at 50, 0, right here. 50, 0. In other words, it's right on the X-axis. Then it ends on 50, 75, a little bit beyond the 50. And that's all it does. Okay. So this is how you draw lines. I showed you how to draw text. We did lines, and of course we could do the change color thing, and then if we did the change color thing, then the lines as they're being drawn, the color of the lines would change. You can imagine all the things you could do. I mean, you could create, I don't know, you know, like for example, bring in random numbers and then random lines with different sizes, and you could create like a little, you know, screensaver, you know. So let's come back to the text and continue. So after we learn how to draw lines with the you know, draw line method, we learn how to draw rectangles. And there's a whole bunch of rectangles that we can go ahead and draw. And what I did was I copied this code, and I wanted to reproduce this, and I had some problems with that. Her code only changes the color one time, And when I did that, the color green and the color red, excuse me, the color red influenced the rest of the stuff going on here. And it didn't match up here. Like I was getting like a red line around here kind of, and this was like, when it said fill, it was filling it with red, you know, because I set the color to red. So what my intention was, is to reproduce this output. And that's kind of the way I've been doing your labs. You're telling, look, this is what I want to get. How do you get this? Okay, well, if I used your code, it didn't work out. And maybe I was doing it wrong. Okay, so if you want to go ahead and prove me wrong, go ahead and prove me wrong. Let's go ahead and look at this. So we're going to go on to the next example. We have the same import statements. You know, inside of main, the same idea about creating the object and then calling the setup method. The difference again here is inside the paint component method. So I went ahead and commented out the actual triangle or rectangle, excuse me, number to associate it with the book. So in the first one here, it's the easiest one. It's draw a rectangle, and it specifies the X and Y coordinates, right? Then notice how we set the color to green. Fine. And then she goes and sets the color to red. This is the one I had to comment out. I had to actually set it to black so that I could have a black line around the rectangle. You know, you figure out a way. Then it goes to red, and then it goes back to black. I had to set it back to black in order for the other rectangles to look like they do in the book. Okay, and then I had to set the color to light gray. Now, she used a method called clear rectangle, and I couldn't get that to work at all. And I looked it up, and it's been, I think it's been, from what I understand, from what I read, it said that particular method, the clear rectangle method, is system dependent now, and it clears it not to the background color, but to the system color. So what I was getting was not the light gray, I was getting the regular white background, okay? So let's go look at the different methods that we have here. Let's just point them out here. We got the regular draw rectangle, then we got the fill rectangle. You know, that's going to be you know, the inside's going to be full. We're going to draw a round rectangle. Then we can go ahead and do when we change the color and draw another one, then it's going to be whatever color was specified before. Right, so that's the way this thing works. And the last ones on here are they draw 3D and they fill 3D. Let's just go ahead and run it, see what it looks like. Remember, to run these, you're going to have to right mouse click on the actual code and click on Run File. So to me, this looks like what's in the book. All right. So if you can imagine here, when I set it to green here, the only way I could get black on this third one was to set it to black. And the only, if you let it black, then this would be black. So after I set this to black, then this one had to be red, and then this one had to go back to black, you know? And then this little internal square, it wasn't working out, so I went ahead and just did another draw rectangle, you know, on there. So the numerator is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So going to rectangle 5 is where I ended up having most of my problems here. I ended up just using another fill rectangle to go ahead and get this little middle one right in there. Okay, so that's my rendition of drawing rectangles. All right, so let's go back to the code, to the book. Drawing ovals now. This is going to be, we're going to use the draw oval and the fill oval. Very easy ideas. And as you can see here, I'm just going to copy this code. When I copied it in here, of course, well, not of course, but it seemed like something was missing. And of course, we had to set the color to blue. You don't get blue for free. You see blue anywhere on here? You know, maybe I'm just being too explicit. So let's go ahead and come over here and let's look at the blue here. So this particular one. See how I had to call the set color object, the set color method, and pass it color.blue. you know, before I draw, before I ended up drawing my ovals, you know, on here. So this one draws an oval starting at 0.00 with a width of 30 and a height of 60. So drawing ovals is a little bit different. To draw an oval, you must imagine a rectangle surrounding the oval. The X and the Y coordinates are the upper left-hand corner of that rectangle. And that's why at the tail end, in just a little minute here, she shows you how to use paint to do this visually, so you don't have to really imagine. You just draw. It's kind of working backwards, right? You go to paint inside of Windows, right? Windows 10 still has paint. And you draw your circle. You look at the information on the screen, and you jot that down to create the circle that you want. Of course, you'll have to be looking at the size of the, work backwards from the size of the canvas and all that kind of good stuff. Let's go ahead and run this so we can take a look at it. So here it is. Move it to the side. After I set the color to blue, I draw an oval, width of 30 and a height of 60. All right, see how that makes it thin. And then I go ahead and do a fill oval. And whenever you say fill oval, it fills it to whatever color has been set. Now, if I would have done another set color here and set it to red, then this circle would be red and not blue. Okay. Continue going on here. So now we go ahead and draw arcs. And this is the most complex section of the book. So, you know, for the starting angle, use the diagram below. So the numbers on the diagram are just for reference points. The number of degrees traveled by an arc range from 0 to 360 in a counterclockwise direction, from 0 to 359 degrees in a clockwise direction. The biggest thing that is hard for a lot of people to remember here is that 0 degrees is right here at 3 o'clock. Yep. That's important to remember. So in this code that we do here, we need to take that into consideration. Like, say, for example, this one here, this draw arc is 0. You know, that's the first arc here, right? And then the second arc, so 0 starts at 3, right? Oh, excuse me, yeah. Here it is, the 0.75, right? Excuse me. The start angle and then the degrees, that would be 0.75, okay? So that makes it, this is 0, which is 3 o'clock, and 75, it's going counterclockwise. You know, if you would have used 90, then it would have been, you know, that would have been right at the top. 180 would have been all the way to the side. 360 would have been all the way around, right? Let's go ahead and look at the code on this, because that's pretty much it. Besides, I guess I'll go over the rest of it and look at it. Her discussion of using paint was really good, because you bring in paint and you, first of all, you want to go ahead and notice the size of your canvas. Well, that's the size of your form, of your window, right? In pixels. Then the next thing is she says, hey, go to view and turn on the ruler and turn on the status bar. You know, if it's not on. And then what you're going to end up doing is you're going to draw whatever you need to draw. And when you click on it, you're going to notice the bounding box for a circle. In this particular case, it's 50-50, and you're going to notice the coordinates. And that's what helps. That is how you end up building your draw oval command. So 200, 50, 50, 50. Well, the last two, 50-50, you know, if the width and the height's it's the same, that makes it a complete circle. So that part's the easy part. So the 250, you know, goes X, 250 goes over here. Here's the upper left-hand side of this circle. That gives you the coordinates of it, okay? All right, so let's just do the last exercise, because that's pretty much it for this chapter, you know. And we'll probably let's go ahead and take a look at the summary. The summary is really small on here. Let's just do the last example and we'll finish off with the summary. The last example here, the most complicated in the book, is the drawing of the arcs. I went ahead and put in the comments in here so that you can try and understand it a little bit better. So she says, picture an oval with the upper left corner of its rectangle at 0, 40. And it's 50 wide and 50 high. Okay. Then starting at angle 0, you know it's 3 o'clock, right? Which is at 3 o'clock. The degrees is 75, which means go counterclockwise 75 degrees. So let's go ahead and run this. Right mouse click on here and run. And there it is. This is an exact duplication of what she has in the book. Now, what did I change from the, you know, I'm just copying and pasting these things. You know, you have to make a few changes. Like when you go up to setup, I had to change the set background to light gray. I think, remember in my demos, I started with gray, but then we ended up moving into yellow, remember? And then we ended up, we didn't start off with any kind of import statements, and then it got gradually a little bit more, you know, complicated as time went on. So let's go ahead and look at the summary. And the summary was kind of sparse, but you know, it's a good way to end my discussion of this particular chapter. And it's a good review of object-oriented programming. Okay, and it discusses not only a basic OOP, but inheritance as well. And that's the way you should think about it. Programming is programming, right? So they talk about the two sets of GUI, you know, which is the abstract windowing toolkit, as well as the swing set. The swing set is the more recent set of GUIs that are preceded with a capital J for the class name. So the window onto which you place components in a Java application is called a JFrame, right? And there are many kinds, many methods for drawing. We ended up putting all of this in remember, in the paint component method. And we were able to, the way we did this is that we went ahead and extended from JComponent so that when we created an object of that class, it went ahead and called the draw, you know, or the particular method, the paint component method, which contained all of these lines of code. Okay, so a bit different from what we're used to. Remember, I kept telling you know, methods, you got to call them. Well, this is an example where you don't necessarily you don't write a line of code, but it's kind of it's there, it's embedded in there. It gets called, you know, when the object is created. So how do you start coding in this? You got to start off with the imports statements, and that's how we're in this. So hopefully this live code brought the chapter to life, because you know she had a lot of little components here, and it wasn't you didn't really get a chance to see the whole thing all slapped together. You say, well, where do I get everything slapped together for me? You know, even though I can't assign everything in the book, to get everything all slapped together for you and understanding, you really need to go through the review questions. Excuse me, not the review questions, the assignments. All of these assignments, the ones that I don't even assign, not the assignments, the exercises. The exercises, these exercises walk you through how to go ahead and construct GUI. Okay, so if you're wanting to learn a little bit more about this, I invite you to go ahead and work through these exercises to get a little bit more familiar with them. But other than that, that's all I have to say about Chapter 10 and graphics. Thank you very much. And that's the end of my meeting for today.